It had been one of those mornings when the air itself seemed heavy, thick with anticipation. The office was buzzing, not in the usual way, but with a subtle, tense energy that hinted at change. The company had been looking for a new executive assistant for months, interviewing candidate after candidate, but no one seemed to fit. Some were overqualified and intimidating, others underprepared and awkward, and a few had personalities so grating that the hiring manager's patience wore thin after a single question. Everyone in the office had begun to whisper about the eternal vacancy, joking half-heartedly about whether anyone would ever fill the role. Yet here she was, walking through the glass doors with an air of calm that seemed almost deliberate, as if she knew exactly what she was walking into. She carried nothing more than a slim leather portfolio, the kind that promised professionalism without pretension. Her shoes made no unnecessary sound on the marble floors, her steps measured and deliberate. Even her hair, simple but perfectly arranged, suggested someone who didn't need to shout to make an impression. The receptionist, a young woman who had seen countless candidates parade through this space, looked up and blinked. There was something about this woman, something that didn't quite fit the usual interview anxiety mold. The kind of confidence that was quiet yet undeniable. "Good morning," the receptionist said, smiling politely. "Ms. Harper is expecting you." "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft but clear, as though it carried the weight of certainty. As she walked toward the interview room, she noticed the small details that others might miss. The slightly crooked picture frame on the wall, the faint scent of jasmine from the receptionist's perfume, the hum of fluorescent lights overhead. It wasn't nervousness, not really, it was awareness. She seemed attuned to her surroundings in a way that suggested she was ready for anything, even the unpredictable. The interview room was bright and modern, with a large oak table at its center and 3 chairs positioned around it. At the head sat the hiring manager, a man in his late 40s with a serious demeanor and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Flanking him were 2 team members, one a stern-faced woman with a clipboard, the other a younger man who looked like he had recently discovered caffeine and ambition in equal measure. All eyes fixed on her as she entered, and for a brief moment, the air felt electric. "Good morning," the hiring manager said, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Please, have a seat." She did so, opening her portfolio just enough to slide a single sheet of paper onto the table. It wasn't a resume, at least, not in the traditional sense. The paper was clean, crisp, and entirely unassuming. The 3 interviewers leaned forward instinctively, expecting the usual cover letter, the usual list of accomplishments. What they saw instead was just 4 words, written in neat, precise handwriting: "Already married to you." There was a moment of silence so complete that it felt like it stretched on indefinitely. The hiring manager raised an eyebrow, the woman with the clipboard furrowed her brow, and the young man actually blinked twice before clearing his throat. "I beg your pardon?" the hiring manager asked, careful to keep his voice steady. "Already married to you," she repeated, her tone as calm as if she had just stated the date or the time. The interviewers exchanged glances, a silent conversation that conveyed confusion, curiosity, and perhaps even a hint of disbelief. This was not the kind of response anyone expected, not in a corporate interview setting where professionalism was measured in buzzwords and polite smiles. "Excuse me, but, are you serious?" the young man asked, leaning forward. She smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that seemed to carry both warmth and a secret. "I am entirely serious. I understand if this seems unusual, but it explains why I am here and why I am not asking for a job I do not already belong to." The hiring manager pinched the bridge of his nose, a gesture she observed with mild interest, as though cataloging it for later. "Ms. he prompted. "Clara Bennett," she said. "Ms. Bennett, I'm afraid we don't quite understand. Are you saying?" He gestured vaguely to the paper, as if the words themselves might explain the mystery. "I am saying exactly what is written there," she replied. "I am already married to you." Another silence fell, heavier this time, like a curtain slowly closing over the room. The team stared at her, caught between skepticism and the strange, magnetic certainty she exuded. One of them had to speak, so it was the woman with the clipboard who finally asked, "Married, to whom?" Clara Bennett's smile remained unshaken. "To the person sitting at the head of this table," she said softly, and her eyes locked with the hiring manager's. Time seemed to slow. The hiring manager, Mr. Randall, felt a disorienting mix of emotions: confusion, disbelief, and something he couldn't quite name. A curious tug at the corner of his chest that suggested he had known this woman longer than he had any reason to. I think there's some mistake," he said finally, though the certainty in her eyes made him hesitate mid-sentence. "There is no mistake," she said. "I am here because the world tells me I need to reply, but in truth, I belong here. With you, and the position, this position, is part of that truth." The young man coughed nervously, looking down at his notes as if they could shield him from the absurdity. This is highly irregular," he said, though even as he spoke, he seemed to realize that he had no clear way to refute her claim. Clara tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. Irregularity is often the first thing noticed when the inevitable arrives. "I did not come to argue about appearances or protocol. I came because it is time." Mr. Randall leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. He could feel his pulse quicken, a strange, unfamiliar electricity in his chest. He thought he might laugh at the absurdity, but the sincerity in her tone made him pause. She wasn't joking. She wasn't testing him. She believed, with a certainty that defied explanation, that this was their reality. "Ms. Bennett," he said carefully, "I have no idea what you're talking about. If this is some kind of elaborate prank." "It is not a prank," she interrupted gently. "I have lived my life, and in the quiet moments, I realized something. Some truths are not found on resumes or in interviews. Some truths are simply recognized." The team exchanged uneasy glances. The office walls suddenly seemed smaller, the fluorescent lights harsher. There was a tension in the air that hadn't existed moments before, as if reality itself had shifted slightly on its axis. "You're claiming we're married?" Mr. Randall asked finally, his voice softer, almost incredulous. "Yes," she said simply. "I have been waiting to come to you because the timing was always wrong. But the timing is right now. I know it seems impossible. I know it seems insane. And yet, here I am." For a moment, Mr. Randall stared at her, trying to process the impossible. Then, slowly, a memory flickered in the back of his mind. Fleeting images of a woman he had once known, moments too brief to have meant much at the time, laughter that seemed familiar but misplaced, the vague sense of a connection that had been ignored. Could it be her? No, that was impossible. And yet, Clara's gaze held him, unwavering, and in that gaze was a quiet certainty that made him question everything he thought he knew about fate, about love, about the boundaries between what is real and what is possible. "Why? Why now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because the waiting is over," she said. "Because life does not always follow the rules. Because some truths, once known, cannot be denied. And because I am ready to live this truth with you." The office team was silent. The clipboard-wielding woman seemed frozen, the young man's notebook forgotten. They had entered this room expecting a routine interview, a standard assessment of skills and qualifications. Instead, they had stepped into a reality that defied reason, a story that could not be explained, only witnessed. And yet, in the midst of confusion and disbelief, there was a strange, undeniable clarity. The world outside continued on its ordinary course, unaware of the quiet revolution taking place in that small office room. But within those walls, something had shifted. Something profound, something irrevocable. Mr. Randall, for the first time in years, felt himself caught between doubt and destiny. The words on that single sheet of paper, "already married to you," were absurd, impossible, and yet they resonated with a truth he could not name, a truth that he had been avoiding without even realizing it. Clara Bennett sat calmly, a subtle smile playing on her lips, as if she had known all along that this moment would come. She had stepped into an office filled with strangers, only to reveal a truth that could not be ignored, a bond that had existed long before either of them could fully comprehend it. And in that silence, in the pause between disbelief and acceptance, the last candidate for the job became something far greater than anyone could have imagined. She became the catalyst for a revelation that would change not just the trajectory of a career, but the course of two lives forever.